Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. So today I am back to talk about short books. I'm currently filming this in the month of March, and of course around this time on BookTube everyone is celebrating big books and vowing to read books over 800 pages, otherwise known as mammoths. Yes, most people right now are participating in March of the Mammoths, but right now I want to think about short books. And most likely this video is going to come out in April anyway, so it's all good. But yes, I just wanted to have a little spot to talk about some of my favourite books that are under 200 pages. It's just always so nice when an author can transmit a story in such a short, sharp, concise way. In this video, I'm not going to be talking about any children's books or plays and poetry, books that you would typically expect to be under 200 pages long anyway. And I'm looking at books that use continuous prose rather than illustration. I have given myself one essay collection within this, and unfortunately there are a couple of books that would have made it onto this list, aside from the fact that typically they are published in a bind-up format, so multiple books in one, and because there's multiple books in one, it takes it over 200 pages. Things like 84 Charing Cross Road by Helen Hanff, a fantastic short book, but which is typically bound up with her follow-up memoir, Duchess of Bloomsbury Street, and that does unfortunately take it over 200 pages long. I was trying to be really strict with myself on this, but there we go. Without much further ado, let's just get straight into these books. Going in order of page count, the shortest book on this list at 32 pages is actually more of a pamphlet than it is a book, but I'm counting it anyway. And it is The Unknown Bookshops and the Delight of Not Getting What You Wanted by Mark Forsyth, a 32-page essay by the author of books like The Horologicon and The Etymologicon. Mark Forsyth is very well known for writing about etymology and just generally being a very funny non-fiction writer. And in this book he is, as the title suggests, talking about book shopping, and particularly going into bookshops without having a set idea of what you want to buy in mind. He's talking particularly about the internet and online book shopping, particularly places like Amazon, and how a lot of that free choice, that ability to explore and be surprised by a book, is really taken away by online shopping, and how important it is to preserve that feeling that you get in a bookshop where you're just wandering through the shelves and then something just leaps out at you, something you've never heard of before but you suddenly just have to read it. Next up is Galatea by Madeline, a short story, of course a myth retelling once again, but this time looking at the myth of Galatea and Pygmalion. I read this I think in January of 2022, and I was very well poised to read this one, having just done a production of My Fair Lady. My Fair Lady being the musical that adapts George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, which is itself a retelling of the Galatea and Pygmalion myth, in which a sculptor creates his perfect woman and then when it comes to life continues to treat it like an object rather than the human that this woman now is. And Madeline Miller's retelling is very feminist, looking at this from Galatea's perspective, how it is to be so locked up, to know that her husband is so hostile towards her because she cannot ever be that perfect woman that he is envisioning, because she is human. She is always inevitably going to fail to meet his expectations. It's very stifling, it's very claustrophobic, but in such a short package is so brilliantly done. Book number 3 is The Library of Unrequited Love by Sophie Divry, coming in at 96 pages. This is a really funny kind of monologue in which a librarian is opening up her library and discovers that one of her customers has accidentally been locked in overnight, and so she's kind of ranting and raving at this guy, talk about all of her life's woes, her feelings on the public, her feelings on the Dewey Decimal System, and about the man that she secretly loves but who is never going to love her. It gets a little bit unhinged, but I really enjoy this one. Definitely one that I feel like could make good monologue fodder for auditions if you are wanting to portray a character whose mind isn't always quite there. Book number 4 is All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufmann, coming in at 108 pages, telling the story of a young man who is one of the only normal people in a world of superheroes. His wife being the perfectionist who one day is hypnotized into believing that her husband is invisible. She spent 6 months not being able to see her husband and finally decides that she's going to move away. And so the main thread of the story is him being on an airplane right next to her, trying to convince her with the short remaining time he has left of his presence, of the fact that he hasn't disappeared. All the while this is interspersed with different stories of all of his different superhero friends and their powers and how they like to use them for the greater good. I think I only gave this around about 3 stars when I first read it, and to be honest I can't think why, because I feel like this is, you know, a short and sweet story that kind of gets in there, does its job, doesn't hang around too long, but you are left kind of feeling uplifted by the end of it. It might not be mind-blowing, but it is very sweet. Book number 5 is a modern classic, and it is Animal Farm by George Orwell, my particular edition coming in at 112 pages. George Orwell's allegory for the Russian Revolution, but told through the main characters of farmyard animals who end up overthrowing their human owners and deciding that they are going to set out a new world order. Slowly but surely, the pigs rise to the top and become the oppressors that they originally were trying to overthrow. It's witty, it's dark. This had such an impact on me when I first read it, and I feel like it's one of those books that you absolutely must read. Coming in at 128 pages is Rizzio by Denise Mina. This book tells the story of the murder of David Rizzio, who was the personal secretary to Mary Queen of Scots, and whose murder at the hands of Mary's husband, her second husband, Lord Darnley, was the catalyst of not only Darnley's downfall, but also Mary's reign itself. And this takes this historical event and turns it into a crime novel. Just a short snapshot of around about 4 days, the build up to the crime itself, and then a little brief look at the aftermath. Another one that is very dark, very powerful, of a very pivotal moment in Mary Queen of Scots' life. Onto a more cheerful book. Book number 7 is once again 128 pages and is The Uncommon Reader by Bennett. This short little novella featuring an alternative Queen of England who stumbles upon a little lending library in Buckingham Palace and suddenly becomes hooked on reading to the extent that she ends up neglecting all other duties. Nobody in the palace can quite understand why reading has taken such a strong hold of Her Majesty, because as they note, the people of Britain don't actually read, so nobody's going to sympathise with her, but she can't help herself. She just loves reading so much. It's very funny, very short and sweet, and I'm sure we've all had those times that we would rather read than do any of our other responsibilities. Book number 8 is another classic, so this probably has many editions that are varying page lengths, but my particular edition of this book is 144 pages and is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, one of my favourite books of all time, which sees the miserly curmudgeon Ebenezer Scrooge visited first by his former business partner Jacob Marley. I felt myself about to say Robert Marley, but no, that is only in A Muppet's Christmas Carol. And then shortly after by 3 other ghosts, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come, who all show him little snapshots into his life, past, present and future, to get him to repent his miserly ways and become a better, kinder person, more generous, more giving, or basically be doomed to hell. It is spooky and Christmas. I feel like it ticks all boxes. And to say it is a bit of a ghost story, to say it is spooky, it is just full of fun as well. A lot of trademark Charles Dickens humour in here, and it's a story that I personally can't get enough of. Coming in at 176 pages is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. We are focusing on 30-something Kiko, who has been working at a Japanese convenience store for about 15 years, which is societally seen as not being a great thing. People would have expected that by her 30s she would have moved on to a different job, to have gotten married and had children, but Kiko is very satisfied with her life. Working at the convenience store works really well for her personality, and so she just can't understand why everybody else is at her, trying to get her to change her life, when she is perfectly happy. But this is a book about societal pressure and expectations, and how maybe we all need to lay off other people for making choices that are right for them. And then book number 10, coming in at 192 pages, is Stop What You're Doing and Read This, an essay collection which is about the joys of reading, of bookshops, of libraries, written by lots of different prominent authors. I think the book was originally from around about 2012 and features a lot of prominent authors: Zadie Smith, Jeanette Winterson, Michael Rosen, Mark Haddon, and many more. This was a book that I read for the first time 10 years ago, just when I was getting back into reading, and this was another great little boost and motivator to, you know, just keep reading. There are some essays in here that I feel like, because they were written 12 years ago, have kind of aged poorly in terms of technology. If I'm remembering rightly, one of the essays in here talks about ebooks and how terrible it is that everybody's reading digitally now rather than reading physical books. And I feel like now in 2024, hopefully there are fewer people who have that opinion. You know, reading is reading, whether you are doing it digitally or with a physical book, and there are pros and cons to both. Hopefully we're all a little bit less judgmental of how people like to read. But like I say, this has a special place in my heart. It was really motivating, and another really great short book. So there we go. Those are 10 recommendations for you if you are either just in the mood for a short book, if you're wanting to have some great picks to boost your Goodreads goal maybe. But just because they are short books does not mean that they are low quality. And I think it takes a lot of skill to be able to get a big idea into a short package. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I've spoken to you about today. Alternatively, I'd love to hear any of your short book recommendations. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.